June 23, 1943. A misty dawn broke over the lush hills of the Solomon Islands, casting long shadows across the muddy terrain of Guadalcanal. The humid air hung heavy as morning light filtered through the dense jungle canopy. Staff Sergeant Marcus Jefferson of the 2nd Marine Division adjusted his position on the ridge, convinced that the upcoming operation would be routine, another day of reconnaissance in a war that seemed endless. He had no idea that within weeks his name would be whispered with both fear and respect across enemy lines. Before we dive into this story, make sure to subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. This is the untold story of how one man's extraordinary skill changed the course of a pivotal Pacific campaign, transforming not only military tactics but also challenging deeply entrenched prejudices within the American armed forces and among their adversaries. Marcus Jefferson had never intended to become a legend. Born in 1918 in rural Louisiana, he grew up hunting in the bayous with his grandfather, an old freedman who had taught him to shoot before he could properly read. "Always respect what you're aiming at," his grandfather would say, "and never waste a bullet." By age 12, Jefferson could hit a squirrel from 200 yards with his grandfather's weathered Springfield rifle, a skill that put food on his family's table during the harshest years of the Great Depression. When the United States entered the Second World War following the attack on Pearl Harbor, Jefferson was among the first wave of African Americans to enlist, despite the segregated military that awaited him. The Marine Corps, historically the most resistant to integration, had only recently begun accepting black recruits under pressure from President Roosevelt and civil rights leaders. Jefferson and thousands of other black Marines trained at Montford Point, a segregated facility near Camp Lejeune in North Carolina. "They didn't think we could fight," recalled Corporal William Thomas, who trained alongside Jefferson. "But Marcus, he could outshoot every instructor on that base. White, black, didn't matter. I've never seen anyone so natural with a rifle." Despite scoring at the top of his class in marksmanship, Jefferson was initially assigned to a supply unit. The Marine Corps, like much of America at that time, wasn't ready to put African Americans on the front lines. However, as casualties mounted in the Pacific and specialized skills became desperately needed, exceptions began to emerge. Lieutenant Colonel James Henderson, commander of the 2nd Marine Division's Scout Sniper Detachment, first noticed Jefferson during a routine inspection of supply units on Guadalcanal. The division had been engaged in fierce fighting with Japanese forces, who had established elaborate defensive positions throughout the island chain. "I was watching this supply sergeant methodically organizing ammunition crates," Henderson later wrote in his memoirs. "Something about his precision caught my eye. When I asked about his background, he mentioned hunting. On a hunch, I invited him to demonstrate his marksmanship. What I witnessed that afternoon changed my understanding of natural talent." Jefferson outshot every sniper in Henderson's unit during an impromptu competition. His ability to calculate distance, wind compensation, and bullet drop without formal training astounded the veteran officers present. Within 24 hours, despite resistance from several senior officers, Jefferson was reassigned to Henderson's Scout Sniper Unit, the first African American to serve in such a role in Marine Corps history. The Scout Sniper teams on Guadalcanal faced a unique challenge. Japanese forces had deployed their own marksmen throughout the dense jungle terrain, creating a deadly chess match that claimed lives on both sides. Among these enemy specialists was a contingent of 40 elite marksmen from the Imperial Japanese Army's Special Forces, commanded by Major Takashi Nakamura, a former Olympic shooting medalist. Nakamura's snipers had been specifically deployed to eliminate American officers and specialists, disrupting command structures and demoralizing troops. Their effectiveness had become a significant concern for American commanders, with 27 confirmed kills in just 2 weeks of operations. "We knew they were out there," said Sergeant Harold Wilkins, one of the few surviving members of Jefferson's unit. "You'd hear a single shot, and someone would drop. No muzzle flash, no position to return fire toward, just death coming out of nowhere. It changes how you move, how you think. We started losing people to panic before we even lost them to bullets." On July 2, 1943, Jefferson embarked on his first official mission with the Scout Sniper Team, Their objective was to locate and eliminate the Japanese sniper positions that had been harassing American units around Hill 762, a strategically important elevation overlooking the American supply lines. Jefferson and his spotter, Corporal Frank Miller, departed before dawn, moving silently through the dense undergrowth toward the suspected enemy positions. Miller, initially skeptical about working with a black Marine, had protested the assignment. "I remember telling the lieutenant it wasn't right," Miller admitted years later. "I said all kinds of things I'm not proud of now, but Henderson just looked at me and said, 'This man might save your life someday. Judge him by his skill, not his skin.' I didn't have much choice, but I kept my distance those first hours." The pair advanced slowly through the jungle, stopping frequently to scan for signs of enemy presence. Jefferson moved with a hunter's patience, reading the environment in ways his formerly trained companions couldn't match. "He noticed things none of us would," Miller explained. "The way certain birds stopped singing in patterns, broken vegetation that looked hours old to me but he could tell had been disturbed minutes ago. He didn't learn that in any Marine manual." Around midday, Jefferson spotted the first Japanese sniper position, a carefully camouflaged blind, constructed in the upper branches of a banyan tree. Through his scope, he could make out the silhouette of a marksman tracking an American patrol moving through the valley below. "Don't take the shot," Jefferson whispered to Miller, surprising his spotter. "There's likely another watching his back. Standard procedure." Instead of firing, Jefferson methodically scanned the surrounding area until he located a second position approximately 100 yards from the first. He noted both locations on their map without engaging, continuing this pattern throughout the day. By sunset, Jefferson had identified 7 enemy sniper positions without firing a single shot, an unprecedented accomplishment in the ongoing counter-sniper operations. Upon returning to American lines, Jefferson presented his findings to Lieutenant Colonel Henderson and Captain Walter Morris, the intelligence officer for the division. "With respect, sir," Jefferson explained, pointing to the marked positions on the map, "these aren't random placements. They've established interlocking fields of fire covering all approaches to Hill 762, but they have 3 vulnerabilities in their pattern." The officers exchanged glances, surprised by both the analysis and the confident delivery from a Marine who, according to military policy at the time, shouldn't even have been in a combat role. "The most significant weakness," Jefferson continued, "is that they're positioned to catch us moving uphill. If we approach from above, coming down from the North Ridge here, we can systematically eliminate each position while staying outside their primary areas of observation." Captain Morris studied the map carefully. "And you're confident in these locations, Sergeant?" "Yes, sir. I'll stake my life on it." "You might be staking more than your own," Morris replied, though without the dismissive tone that often accompanied interactions with black servicemen. "But this is the most concrete intelligence we've had on their positions in weeks. We'll plan an operation based on your findings." What followed was a careful integration of Jefferson's observations into a broader tactical plan. Rather than the standard approach of sending multiple sniper teams to hunt their counterparts, a method that had proven costly in previous attempts, Henderson authorized a more focused operation. Jefferson and Miller would infiltrate the Japanese positions from the North Ridge as suggested, while conventional forces would create a diversion with artillery bombardment on the eastern slope of the hill. The operation commenced at dawn on July 7th. Jefferson and Miller, having moved into position during the night, began their systematic elimination of the identified sniper positions as the diversionary bombardment drew Japanese attention eastward. "I'll never forget watching him work," Miller recounted. "There was no wasted movement, no hesitation. He'd locate a target, control his breathing, and squeeze off a single shot. Then we'd wait, sometimes 5 minutes, sometimes 30, before moving to the next position. It was like hunting with a ghost." By midday, Jefferson had neutralized 5 of the 7 identified Japanese snipers without alerting their companions to his presence. The precision of his shooting, combined with the tactical approach of targeting the positions in a sequence that prevented mutual support, demonstrated a level of skill and strategic thinking that impressed even the most experienced officers receiving the field reports. Word of Jefferson's success quickly spread throughout the division. For the first time in weeks, patrols reported no sniper casualties in the Hill 762 sector. Lieutenant Colonel Henderson, recognizing the significance of the achievement, personally debriefed Jefferson and Miller upon their return. "You've accomplished more in one day than our entire counter-sniper effort has in 3 weeks," Henderson told Jefferson. "I want you to train a specialized team focusing exclusively on eliminating their marksmen." Jefferson's response was measured. "Sir, with respect, I work better with smaller groups. Large teams make noise, leave signs. The Japanese will adapt to our tactics if we become too predictable." Henderson considered this, then nodded. 3 teams, then. You'll lead one, select and train the personnel for the others. I want their sniper threat neutralized before our next major push." This decision marked the beginning of what would later be informally called Jefferson's Hunters, a specialized counter-sniper unit that operated largely independently from conventional Marine forces. Jefferson selected 6 additional Marines based not on rank or experience, but on specific aptitudes he observed during training sessions. Patience, attention to detail, and natural shooting ability. Notably, 2 of these Marines were also African Americans who, like Jefferson, had been serving in support roles despite their skills. Privates First Class Robert Williams and Earl Phillips had both been ammunition carriers before Jefferson recommended their transfer. The remaining 4 Marines were white, creating one of the first integrated combat units in American military history, though its existence remained largely unofficial in military records. As July progressed, Jefferson's team systematically dismantled the Japanese sniper network throughout the Guadalcanal region. Their methodology was unconventional by military standards, but devastatingly effective. Rather than engaging in direct firefights, they employed what Jefferson called hunter's patience, sometimes observing enemy positions for days before taking action. This approach yielded results that transformed the tactical situation. By the end of July, 23 confirmed enemy sniper eliminations were attributed to Jefferson personally, with his teams accounting for 17 more. American casualties from sniper fire decreased by 78% in areas where Jefferson's teams operated. Major Takashi Nakamura, commanding the Japanese marksmen, noticed this dramatic shift. Intercepted communications, later translated by American intelligence, revealed his growing concern. "Our positions are being systematically discovered and neutralized by an unseen enemy. Traditional counter-sniper tactics have proven ineffective. Request immediate reinforcement and re-evaluation of deployment patterns." The Japanese response was to deploy additional snipers from their specialized training cadre, bringing their total to the 40 elite marksmen referenced in intelligence reports. These were not ordinary soldiers with rifles, but specially selected veterans with extensive marksmanship training and specialized equipment, including the Type 97 sniper rifle with its precise telescopic sight. What the Japanese commanders didn't anticipate, however, was how Jefferson would adapt to this escalation. Rather than continuing the same methodical elimination process, he altered his approach based on his understanding of his opponent's psychology. "They're looking for patterns now," Jefferson explained to his teams during an evening briefing in early August. "So we give them none. No fixed rotation, no predictable movement times. We become completely irregular in everything except results." This psychological dimension of the counter-sniper campaign proved crucial. Japanese marksmen, trained in the disciplined military tradition that emphasized order and procedure, struggled to counter an adversary whose movements seemed random and unpredictable. Jefferson's reputation began to take on an almost mythical quality among American troops. Marines operating in areas where his teams worked reported feeling a sense of protection, knowing that the enemy snipers who had terrorized them for months were now themselves being hunted. "We started calling him the Shadow," remembered Corporal James Davis of the 1st Battalion. Not to his face, of course, but word got around that this black Marine was out there somewhere, watching over us. It changed morale completely. For the Japanese forces, the effect was the opposite. Surviving communications indicate that Nakamura's snipers began experiencing the same psychological stress they had previously inflicted on American troops. The uncertainty of when and where Jefferson's teams might strike created hesitation that diminished their effectiveness. A particularly significant operation occurred on August 12th, when intelligence reported that several high-ranking Japanese officers would be conducting a forward observation tour near Mount Austin. This presented both an opportunity and a challenge for Jefferson's teams, as the Japanese had undoubtedly reinforced security for such an important group. Jefferson decided to handle this mission personally, selecting Miller as his spotter and moving into position 2 days ahead of the reported visit. They established a hide site in a densely vegetated area overlooking a ridgeline that intelligence believed the Japanese officers would traverse. "Those were the longest 48 hours of my life," Miller later recalled. "No movement during daylight, minimal water, no hot food." Jefferson didn't seem bothered at all. He'd become completely still, like he was part of the earth itself. Their patience was rewarded when, shortly after dawn on the 14th, a group of 7 Japanese officers appeared on the ridge, accompanied by 4 guards. Through his scope, Jefferson identified Major Nakamura among them, apparently briefing the others on the terrain. The range was extreme, later estimated at over 800 yards, with significant wind variation across the valley. Most snipers wouldn't have attempted such a shot given the conditions. "He studied the wind for nearly 20 minutes, Miller said, watching leaves, grass movement, heat distortion. Then he made a single adjustment to his scope, took 3 controlled breaths, and squeezed the trigger between heartbeats. The shot struck Nakamura, creating immediate confusion among the Japanese officers. Before their guards could determine the direction of fire, Jefferson had already begun the carefully planned extraction route, leaving no evidence of their position. The psychological impact of this operation extended far beyond the immediate tactical result. Japanese communications in the following days revealed a significant deterioration in their snipers' morale. Having lost their commander to an unseen American marksman at a range they considered nearly impossible under field conditions, created a sense of vulnerability that undermined their operational effectiveness. By late August, reports from captured Japanese soldiers began to include references to an American ghost sniper who could strike from impossible distances. Some accounts even suggested that the Japanese had placed a bounty on this mysterious marksman, though they had no clear description of who they were hunting. What they couldn't have known, what would have seemed inconceivable to them given the racial attitudes of the era, was that the sniper dismantling their carefully constructed network was an African American from Louisiana who had learned his craft hunting in the bayous. The effectiveness of Jefferson's operations eventually attracted attention beyond the immediate theater. War correspondents attached to Marine units began hearing rumors of an extraordinary sniper whose success was transforming the battle for Guadalcanal. Their attempts to identify and interview this individual were consistently redirected by officers who cited operational security concerns. In reality, many within the Marine Command structure remained uncomfortable with the potential publicity surrounding Jefferson's achievements. Despite the undeniable tactical value of his contributions, the idea of publicly celebrating an African American as a Marine Corps hero contradicted the institutional racism that remained firmly entrenched in the military establishment. Lieutenant Colonel Henderson, however, recognized both the military significance and the broader implications of Jefferson's success. In a boldly progressive move for the time, he submitted Jefferson for the Silver Star, documenting in detail the 34 confirmed enemy eliminations attributed to him personally and the revolutionary tactical approach he had developed. "Sergeant Jefferson has demonstrated extraordinary valor and military acumen," Henderson wrote in his recommendation. "His actions have saved countless Marine lives and significantly altered the tactical balance in our favor. I can state without reservation that he represents the highest traditions of the Marine Corps, regardless of race or background." The recommendation moved slowly through channels, encountering resistance at various levels of command. Some officers argued that the achievement, while noteworthy, did not meet the criteria for such a high decoration. Others more openly questioned whether awarding a Silver Star to an African-American Marine would create inappropriate expectations among other black servicemen. While this bureaucratic battle unfolded far from the front lines, Jefferson remained focused on his mission. By September, his teams had effectively neutralized the Japanese sniper threat across the American-controlled sectors of Guadalcanal. Of the 40 elite marksmen that intelligence had identified, 37 had been confirmed eliminated, with the remaining 3 believed to have been withdrawn to other islands. This success created an opportunity to expand the scope of Jefferson's operations. With Guadalcanal largely secured, American forces were preparing for advances into other Japanese-held territories in the Solomon Islands chain. Henderson proposed deploying Jefferson's teams ahead of conventional forces to eliminate enemy observation posts and command personnel before the main assaults. On September 23rd, Jefferson led a 4-man team on an infiltration mission to New Georgia, an island still firmly under Japanese control. Their objective was to eliminate key observation positions and create confusion prior to the planned American landing. The operation began successfully, with Jefferson's team neutralizing 3 coastal observation posts within the first 48 hours. However, on the 3rd day, they encountered an unexpected Japanese patrol while moving between positions. In the ensuing exchange of fire, Jefferson was wounded in the shoulder, but managed to cover his team's withdrawal before extracting himself. Despite the injury, he insisted on completing the mission objectives before allowing evacuation. "He refused to leave until we'd finished what we came to do," remembered Private Williams, who had been part of the team. "Even bleeding, he outshot every one of us, took out 2 more of their positions, before finally agreeing to head back to our extraction point. Upon returning to Guadalcanal, Jefferson received medical treatment and, to his surprise, found Lieutenant Colonel Henderson waiting with news. His Silver Star recommendation had been approved, overriding the objections that had initially stalled it. The award ceremony, held on October 7, 1943, was intentionally kept modest at Jefferson's request. He received the decoration in the presence of his team members and immediate commanders rather than at a larger divisional formation. "This doesn't belong just to me," Jefferson reportedly said after receiving the medal. "It belongs to every Marine who never got a chance to show what they could do because of the color of their skin." The impact of Jefferson's achievements extended beyond his individual recognition. His success provided powerful evidence against the prevailing assumption that African Americans lacked the capability for combat leadership and specialized military roles. Within the 2nd Marine Division, attitudes began to shift, slowly and unevenly but perceptibly. After what he accomplished, certain things couldn't be said anymore, at least not openly, Miller reflected years later. "When you've trusted someone to watch over you in combat, when your life has been in their hands, it changes how you see them. Not completely, not for everyone, but it plants a seed." As 1943 drew to a close, the strategic situation in the Pacific continued to evolve. American forces were advancing island by island, pushing back the Japanese defensive perimeter at significant cost. Jefferson, now promoted to gunnery sergeant, was tasked with training additional counter-sniper teams to support these operations. The training program he developed emphasized not only marksmanship, but also fieldcraft, psychological operations, and tactical patience, elements that had made his own teams so effective. Significantly, these training units were integrated, with African American and white Marines learning and working together outside the normally rigid segregation of the time. Word of Jefferson's methods and success eventually reached the Japanese High Command. Naval intelligence intercepted and translated a remarkable assessment from General Harukichi Hyakutake, commander of the Japanese 17th Army, to Imperial headquarters. "American forces have deployed a new type of warrior against which our traditional doctrine has proven inadequate. Reports from surviving officers describe an adversary who strikes without warning. From distances our marksmen consider impossible and disappears without trace. The psychological effect on our forward units has been severe. 40 of our finest marksmen have simply vanished, most without firing a single shot in their own defense." The remarkable success of Jefferson and his teams in the Pacific created ripples that eventually reached the European theater of operations. By early 1944, as Allied forces prepared for the anticipated invasion of Nazi-occupied Europe, military planners were actively seeking tactical advantages that could reduce casualties during the initial landing operations. Colonel William Richards, head of a specialized training unit preparing for the cross-channel invasion, received a classified report detailing the counter-sniper methodologies developed by Jefferson on Guadalcanal. Recognizing their potential value, Richards arranged for Jefferson to be temporarily transferred to England to assist with training snipers for the European campaign. This transfer, while operationally justified, was not without controversy. Several senior officers questioned the wisdom of bringing an African-American Marine to train predominantly white army units preparing for the European theater. Richards, however, was pragmatic in his assessment. "I don't care if he's purple with orange stripes," Richards reportedly told objecting staff officers. "This man has eliminated more enemy specialists than any other sniper in the Pacific. Our boys need every advantage we can give them before they hit those beaches." Jefferson arrived in England in February 1944, assigned to a specialized training facility in the Scottish Highlands, where terrain offered conditions for long-range marksmanship practice. His initial reception was predictably cool, with many Army instructors skeptical about what they could learn from a Marine, especially an African-American one. Captain Howard Matthews, the facility's executive officer, later described the atmosphere. "There was resistance, certainly. Some men refused to shake his hand at the initial briefing. Others made comments just loud enough to be heard. Jefferson never acknowledged any of it. He simply asked to see our training program and current qualification results, then requested permission to demonstrate his methods on the range." The demonstration proved transformative. At 1,000 yards, Jefferson placed 5 consecutive rounds into a target area the size of a helmet, a feat that exceeded the qualification standards of any sniper present. More impressively, he did so under conditions designed to challenge him, with an unfamiliar rifle, in gusting crosswinds, and with intentionally misaligned sights that he corrected through observation and adjustment. After that, the color barrier didn't exactly disappear, but it became secondary to what he could teach, Matthews recalled. Men who wouldn't sit near him at breakfast were taking notes when he spoke by afternoon. Over the following 6 weeks, Jefferson worked with 5 specialized sniper teams preparing for deployment to Europe. His training philosophy emphasized several principles that contrasted sharply with standard Army doctrine at the time: patience over aggression, psychological impact over volume of fire, and adaptation to environment over standardized procedures. "The Germans have been fighting a disciplined, methodical war for years," Jefferson explained during one session. "They expect their opponents to behave according to recognizable patterns. When you disrupt those expectations, when you become unpredictable, you create hesitation. In combat, hesitation gets you defeated." This psychological dimension particularly intrigued Richards and his staff. European battlefield reports indicated that German snipers had been extremely effective in slowing Allied advances during the Italian campaign, often holding up entire companies by targeting officers and non-commissioned officers. Jefferson's approach wasn't just about shooting, noted Lieutenant Thomas Wilson, who documented the training program. It was about creating uncertainty in the enemy's mind, making them second-guess their movements, their positions, even their equipment. It was warfare at its most psychological. By April, as preparations for Operation Overlord accelerated, Jefferson's temporary assignment was extended at Richards' request. The colonel had received preliminary feedback from units that had deployed snipers trained under Jefferson's program to Italy, and the results were promising. Allied casualties from enemy marksmen had decreased notably in sectors where these snipers operated. Jefferson's European service might have remained a specialized footnote in military history, had events not taken an unexpected turn in early May 1944. During a training exercise in the Highlands, a message arrived recalling Richards to London for an urgent briefing. Intelligence had uncovered a concerning development. The Germans had established a specialized sniper school near Caen in northern France, an area directly in the path of planned Allied landings. Intercepted communications indicated that this facility was training selected marksmen from various German units, concentrating expertise that could prove devastating during the vulnerable beach landing phases of the invasion. More concerning was the reported presence of 40 Gebirgsjäger marksmen, mountain troops with exceptional shooting skills developed in the harsh conditions of the Eastern Front. Richards returned to the training facility with unprecedented orders. Jefferson would lead a specialized team on a pre-invasion mission to neutralize the German sniper school. The operation, codenamed Highland Whisper, would drop a small team behind enemy lines approximately 72 hours before the main landings. "This goes beyond training now, Sergeant," Richards told Jefferson during the mission briefing. "Intelligence believes these German marksmen could inflict thousands of casualties if they're positioned along the invasion beaches. Your objective is to eliminate that threat before our main forces arrive." Jefferson studied the limited intelligence available: aerial photographs, resistance reports, and intercepted communications. The German facility was well protected, situated within a medieval hunting lodge surrounded by open ground that would make conventional infiltration difficult. "They've created perfect fields of fire around their own position," Jefferson observed. "They're expecting any attack to come from the ground, approaching across these open areas. They haven't secured their rear approaches nearly as well, assuming the dense forest provides natural protection." His assessment led to a daring proposal. Rather than attempting to assault the facility directly, his team would infiltrate through the supposedly impassable forest and establish positions overlooking the Germans' own training grounds. From there, they could systematically eliminate instructors and students during their regular practice sessions. The plan represented significant risk, but Richards recognized its potential. "You're proposing to turn their training facility into our hunting ground," he summarized. "It's audacious, but if successful, could not only eliminate the immediate threat, but create psychological impact that extends beyond the target itself." Jefferson selected 4 members for his team: 2 Army Rangers who had completed his training program with exceptional results, and 2 British commandos with extensive experience in behind-the-lines operations. Notably absent were any of his Marine colleagues from the Pacific, a deliberate choice reflecting his understanding of the different challenges presented by the European theater. "The Pacific was about patience and endurance in harsh conditions," he explained to his team during preparation. "Europe is about precision in compressed timeframes. We won't have the luxury of waiting days for the perfect shot. We'll need to act decisively within narrow windows of opportunity." Training for Highland Whisper consumed the next 2 weeks, with the team practicing infiltration techniques, communication protocols, and synchronized firing patterns. Jefferson insisted on rehearsing every aspect of the operation until each team member could perform their role with minimal guidance, a necessity given the communication limitations they would face behind enemy lines. On May 31, 1944, 6 days before the scheduled Normandy landings, Jefferson and his team parachuted into occupied France under the cover of darkness. Their drop zone was 15 miles from the target, requiring a careful approach through territory regularly patrolled by German forces. The initial infiltration proceeded according to plan, with the team establishing a temporary hide site in a densely wooded area by dawn. From there, Jefferson dispatched the 2 British commandos on reconnaissance, seeking to verify intelligence about the German facility and identify potential approach routes. When the commandos returned 12 hours later, their report confirmed some aspects of the intelligence but revealed concerning discrepancies. The German sniper school was operational, but with a much larger contingent than expected, approximately 60 marksmen rather than the 40 indicated in the original briefing. Additionally, they had established defensive positions that suggested awareness of potential Allied interest in the facility. "They're not just training there," reported Sergeant William Davies, one of the British commandos. "They're preparing for deployment. Equipment is staged. Transport vehicles are being prepared. I'd estimate they're 48 to 72 hours from movement toward the coast." This development significantly altered the operational timeline. If the German snipers deployed to prepared positions along the invasion beaches before Jefferson's team could act, the potential for Allied casualties would increase dramatically. The original plan of methodical elimination over several days was no longer viable. Jefferson analyzed the new information and adjusted their approach accordingly. "We don't have time for the gradual operation we planned," he told his team. "We need to create maximum disruption in minimum time. This becomes about psychological impact now, more than complete elimination." His revised plan called for a more aggressive approach that contradicted his usual methodical methods. The team would move to positions overlooking the facility that night and initiate action at dawn, when the Germans typically conducted their first training sessions of the day. Rather than targeting individual marksmen sequentially, they would focus on instructors, command staff, and equipment, creating confusion that would delay deployment even if they couldn't eliminate all personnel. "We want them questioning everything," Jefferson explained. "Their security, their equipment, their intelligence. Even if some make it to the coast eventually, we want them looking over their shoulders instead of through their scopes." The team moved into position during the night. Navigating through terrain the Germans considered impassable. By first light, they had established firing positions that overlooked the main training area from 3 different angles, creating interlocking fields of fire that would maximize initial confusion. As dawn broke on June 2nd, the German facility came to life. Instructors and students assembled in the central courtyard for what appeared to be a briefing before the day's training. Jefferson, observing through his scope, identified the senior officers based on insignia and body language, the primary targets in the revised plan. "On my mark," Jefferson whispered into the short-range radio connecting the team. "Command staff first, then communication equipment, then vehicles. 3 rounds maximum per target, then shift. We fire for exactly 2 minutes, then withdraw immediately to Rendezvous Point Baker." At precisely 6:15 in the morning, Jefferson fired the first shot, eliminating what appeared to be the senior instructor, addressing the assembled marksmen. His team followed immediately, creating a precisely orchestrated pattern of fire that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The effect was exactly as Jefferson had anticipated. Without clear indication of where the fire originated, the Germans scattered in multiple directions, many taking cover in positions that actually exposed them to other members of Jefferson's team. Their training as individual marksmen hadn't prepared them for being on the receiving end of a coordinated sniper attack. In the planned 2 minutes of fire, Jefferson's team successfully neutralized the command structure, disabled the communication center, and rendered several transport vehicles inoperable. The psychological impact was even more significant. The Germans' own training facility, which they had considered secure, had been compromised by an unseen enemy applying their own tactics against them. The team withdrew as planned, moving rapidly through their pre-established extraction route. By midday, they had reached their emergency rendezvous point 15 miles south, where they would await nightfall before continuing to the coastal extraction point, where a fast boat would return them to England. "Did we get all of them?" asked Private Thomas Reynolds, one of the Army Rangers, as they established their temporary position. "No," Jefferson replied honestly. "Maybe 20% of their force, but we got something more valuable than numbers." "What's that?" "Sergeant?" "We took their certainty," Jefferson explained. "Every surviving marksman is now questioning their training, their equipment, their leadership. They're wondering how we found them, how we got past their security, how we knew when they would be assembled. That hesitation will save more lives than if we'd eliminated every single one of them." The team successfully extracted from France on the night of June 3rd, returning to England as final preparations for the D-Day landings were underway. Jefferson immediately briefed Colonel Richards on the operation's outcomes and the revised estimate of German sniper strength in the invasion area. Richards, after reviewing the report, summoned General Montgomery's intelligence staff to integrate Jefferson's observations into the final assault planning. The presence of trained German marksmen remained a threat, but intelligence now indicated they were dispersed and disorganized rather than deploying according to their original coordinated plan. "Your team has given our forces a critical advantage," Richards told Jefferson after the briefing. "The Germans expected to engage our troops from positions of their choosing with confidence and coordination. Instead, they're scattered, uncertain, and looking over their shoulders." Jefferson returned to his training duties as the massive invasion force prepared for deployment. On June 6th, as thousands of Allied troops stormed the beaches of Normandy, reports began filtering back, confirming the operation's impact. German sniper activity, while present, was notably less coordinated and effective than intelligence had feared. Most significantly, the German marksmen positioned near Omaha and Utah beaches sectors assigned to American forces, appeared hesitant to reveal their positions by firing, allowing assault teams to advance farther inland before encountering organized resistance. A captured German officer, interrogated on June 8th, provided confirmation of Highland Whisper's psychological impact. The attack on the sniper school had created confusion throughout the German defensive preparations, with rumors spreading of Allied commandos specifically hunting their specialized units ahead of the invasion. They said American shadows had come for them, the intelligence report quoted the officer. Men who could strike without being seen, who knew their positions before they did. Many refused to occupy their assigned positions, believing they had been compromised. Others abandoned equipment they feared had been sabotaged. It was most unusual. These were disciplined soldiers who suddenly became superstitious, jumping at shadows. As Allied forces established their beachhead and began the difficult advance inland, Jefferson received unexpected orders. He was being returned to the Pacific Theater. The reasoning was twofold. His training mission in Europe was complete, and his specialized skills were needed for the increasingly difficult island campaigns against Japanese forces. Before departing England, Jefferson received an unusual visitor at the training facility, General Omar Bradley, who had commanded American forces during the Normandy landings, arrived with minimal ceremony to meet the Marine, whose operation had contributed to the invasion's success. Their conversation was brief, but consequential. Bradley, known for his straightforward manner, asked Jefferson what he had learned from operating in both theaters of the war. "The enemy is different, sir," Jefferson replied, "but fear works the same way on everyone. When a man believes he can be reached, that nowhere is safe, it changes how he fights. It doesn't matter if he's Japanese, German, or American, or what color his skin is. Fear makes all men equal." Bradley nodded thoughtfully. "Your operation saved a lot of American lives on those beaches, Sergeant. The Germans never expected we'd turn their own tactics against them so effectively. They certainly never expected who would be leading that effort." "Most Americans wouldn't expect it either, sir," Jefferson responded. "That's changing," Bradley said. "Slowly, perhaps, but changing nonetheless. Men like you are seeing to that." Jefferson returned to the Pacific in July 1944, rejoining the Marine Corps forces as they continued their island-hopping campaign toward Japan. His experience in Europe had broadened his tactical approach, incorporating elements of the German precision methodology into his existing framework. The Pacific campaign had evolved significantly during his absence. Japanese forces, increasingly aware of their strategic disadvantage, had adopted more desperate defensive measures. Their sniper tactics had become more reckless, but also more numerous, with conventional infantry receiving basic marksmanship training to supplement their dedicated marksmen. Jefferson resumed leadership of his specialized counter-sniper teams, now expanded to include 12 operational units deployed across multiple islands. Their effectiveness remained exceptional, with Jefferson personally accounting for 17 additional confirmed eliminations during operations on Peleliu and Iwo Jima. Beyond his direct combat contributions, Jefferson's most significant impact came through the training methodology he continued to refine and document. By late 1944, his approach had been formalized into the Jefferson Method, a comprehensive counter-sniper doctrine that was implemented throughout Marine operations in the Pacific. The effectiveness of this methodology was particularly evident during the Okinawa campaign, where Japanese forces had deployed over 200 snipers in prepared positions throughout the island's northern sector. Marine units trained in Jefferson's techniques systematically neutralized these positions with minimal casualties, contributing significantly to the operation's eventual success. Throughout these later campaigns, Jefferson noticed a gradual but meaningful shift in how he and other African-American Marines were perceived by their white counterparts. While institutional segregation remained policy, operational integration became increasingly common, particularly in specialized units where skill superseded other considerations. It wasn't equality, Jefferson later reflected, not by any measure, but it was a crack in the wall. Men who would never have considered serving alongside us were now requesting African-American snipers for their units, not because their minds had changed about race, but because they wanted the best protecting them. It was a start. As the war in the Pacific approached its conclusion, Jefferson's health began to deteriorate. The cumulative effect of tropical diseases, combat injuries, and the extreme physical demands of extended operations in harsh conditions. In June 1945, he was evacuated from Okinawa with a severe recurrence of malaria combined with combat exhaustion. After initial treatment at a field hospital, Jefferson was transferred to the Naval Hospital in San Diego for extended recovery. It was there, still weakened by illness, that he received notification of his second Silver Star, awarded for his actions during the Highland Whisper operation in France, an unprecedented recognition for an African-American Marine in a European operation. More surprisingly, Jefferson received a personal letter from General Alexander Vandergrift, Commandant of the Marine Corps, acknowledging his contributions to Marine Corps tactical development and indicating that his training methodology would be incorporated into the formal Scout Sniper curriculum at Quantico. The recognition was significant, yet the letter carefully avoided mentioning Jefferson's race or the barriers he had overcome, a reflection of the military establishment's continued discomfort with directly addressing racial integration despite growing evidence of its operational benefits. Jefferson remained in the hospital when news arrived of the Japanese surrender on August 14, 1945. The war that had taken him from segregated training facilities to the peaks of professional recognition had ended, leaving unanswered questions about what role African Americans would play in the post-war military. Upon his medical release in October, Jefferson faced a decision common to many returning veterans: whether to continue his military career in peacetime or return to civilian life. The Marine Corps, recognizing his unique value, offered him a permanent position at Quantico as an instructor, a role that would make him one of the first African-American Marines to serve in the prestigious training facility. After considerable deliberation, Jefferson declined the offer. His reasons, explained in a letter to Lieutenant Colonel Henderson, reflected both personal exhaustion and recognition of institutional limitations. "I've given what I can to the Corps," he wrote. "While I believe the organization is capable of change, I don't wish to be the instrument of that change any longer. Some battles need to be fought by those with more energy than I now possess." Jefferson returned to Louisiana, using his veterans' benefits to purchase land near his childhood home. There he established a modest farm and occasionally worked as a hunting guide, a quiet life that contrasted sharply with his wartime experiences. His military achievements remained largely unknown to the general public, while the exploits of white snipers from both theaters were celebrated in newspapers and magazines. Jefferson's contributions were documented primarily in classified reports and specialized military publications with limited circulation. This relative obscurity suited Jefferson, who had never sought public recognition. However, it also represented a missed opportunity for the American public to recognize the contributions of African-American servicemen during the war, recognition that might have accelerated the eventual integration of the armed forces. In 1948, when President Truman issued Executive Order 9981 officially desegregating the military, Jefferson was among the African-American veterans invited to the White House for the announcement. Though still reluctant to embrace a public role, he accepted the invitation out of respect for the significance of the moment. During the reception, following the formal ceremony, Jefferson encountered several former officers from both theaters who had worked with him during the war. Their conversations, while cordial, revealed the complex legacy of his service. Many acknowledged the exceptional nature of his contributions while struggling to reconcile those achievements with their continued resistance to broader integration. One encounter particularly stood out. General Bradley, now Army Chief of Staff, recognized Jefferson and approached him directly. "I've often thought about our conversation in England," Bradley said, "about fear making all men equal. I've come to believe you were only partly right, Sergeant. It's not fear that makes men equal. It's excellence. What you accomplished forced men to see beyond their preconceptions. That's the kind of change that lasts." Jefferson's reply was characteristically measured. "Change comes slowly, General. What matters is that it comes at all." The integration of the American military proceeded unevenly in the years following Truman's order, with resistance persisting in various forms across all branches. The Marine Corps, historically the most resistant to African American service, remained among the slowest to implement meaningful integration at all levels. Jefferson largely retreated from public life during these years, focusing on his farm and family. He rarely discussed his wartime experiences, even with other veterans, preferring to leave those memories in the past. His silver stars remained in a drawer rather than displayed, alongside letters of commendation from commanders in both theaters. In 1954, as the Marine Corps reluctantly accelerated integration following the Supreme Court's Brown v. Board of Education decision, Jefferson received an unexpected letter from Quantico. The Marine Corps was establishing a formal Scout Sniper School and wished to name its primary training methodology after him, the Jefferson Doctrine of Precision Counter-Sniper Operations. The letter represented a significant acknowledgement of his contributions, yet it also highlighted the contradictions still embedded in military culture. The same institution that had initially relegated him to support roles based solely on race now wished to memorialize his tactical innovations as part of its heritage. After considerable reflection, Jefferson granted permission with a single condition: that the program be open to all qualified Marines, regardless of race or background. The condition was accepted, marking one of the first formally integrated training programs in Marine Corps history. Jefferson visited Quantico only once following this decision, observing a training session from a distance without introducing himself to the participants. The sight of African American and white Marines learning side by side, applying techniques he had developed under the pressures of combat, provided a measure of closure to his military experience. "They don't know who I am," he remarked to his accompanying officer, "and that's exactly as it should be. They're learning these methods because they work, not because of who created them. That's real progress." In the decades that followed, as American society gradually confronted its racial divisions through the civil rights movement, Jefferson maintained his private life. He declined numerous requests for interviews and public appearances, even as military historians began documenting the contributions of African American servicemen during World War II. It was not until 1977, more than 3 decades after his remarkable service, that Jefferson agreed to a comprehensive interview for a Marine Corps oral history project. His recollections, detailed and precise despite the passage of years, provided invaluable insights into both the tactical innovations he had developed and the personal challenges he had overcome. When asked what he considered his most significant contribution to the war effort, Jefferson's answer surprised the interviewer. Rather than citing his personal elimination count or the Highland Whisper operation, he pointed to a broader impact. "I showed what was possible when skill was valued over preconception," he said. "Every time a commander requested my teams, despite knowing who led them, another crack appeared in the wall of segregation. The war didn't change everything, far from it, but it created openings through which change could eventually flow." Jefferson passed away in 1982 at the age of 64, his military achievements still largely unknown outside specialized circles. His funeral, held in his hometown in Louisiana, was attended by an unexpected mix of local residents and military personnel, including several retired officers who had worked with him during the war and a contingent of active-duty Marine snipers sent from Quantico. In 2001, following a review of previously classified operations from World War II, the Marine Corps posthumously awarded Jefferson the Navy Cross for his actions during the Highland Whisper operation. The citation acknowledged not only his tactical success, but also the groundbreaking nature of his service across both theaters of the war. The training methodology Jefferson developed continues to influence military doctrine into the present day. His emphasis on psychological impact, environmental adaptation, and tactical patience remains fundamental to special operations training throughout the American military and among Allied forces. Perhaps most significantly, Jefferson's story exemplifies how individual excellence can challenge systemic barriers. In the crucible of global conflict, facing enemies who never expected to encounter an African American with his extraordinary abilities, Jefferson demonstrated that skill and courage transcend the artificial boundaries of race. His legacy lives on not only in military doctrine, but in the opportunities now available to all Americans who serve their country, opportunities that existed in his time only as exceptions to a discriminatory rule. The fact that today's military includes African Americans at all levels of command, from squad leaders to generals, represents the fulfillment of a possibility that Jefferson helped create through his remarkable service. The German forces never expected that one black Marine sniper could outshoot their best marksman, just as many Americans never expected that an African American would make such significant contributions to military tactics and strategy. In proving both wrong, Marcus Jefferson helped change not just the course of particular battles, but the institution to which he had dedicated his service. And that concludes our story. If you made it this far, please share your thoughts in the comments. What part of this historical account surprised you most? Don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories from World War II. And check out the video on screen for another incredible tale from history. Until next time.